Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where I interview educators and entrepreneurs on leveling up. Each week, I zoom in someone who's dope, and we just chit chat and have some conversations on how you can take control of your life, your career, and your money. Today's guest is Kris Macchiarola. We came in contact via LinkedIn, and I wanted her on the show. Because as you know, season 4 is the year of the edupreneur, and she went from educator to entrepreneur. And I wanted to have her on to gain some insights on consulting in general and sort of give you an idea of her background and how she made that transition. So for those who will be watching on YouTube or listening on SoundCloud and iTunes in the future, Kris, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So Kris Macchiarola, and I'm the owner and president of KMac Solutions, which is a consulting firm. And I work with organizations really with a focus on human to human. So prioritizing humans within organizations, because at the end of the day, many of the challenges that organizations are facing are regarding human issues. And they're so close to these problems that they just can't see it and they don't know how to fix it. So that is my passion, and I've been on the entrepreneur journey for a little bit over a year now, and I'm definitely enjoying it and growing and learning a lot as I go.
Excellent. So what made you leave public education, and how did you get started consulting?
So that's was definitely a long journey. I was a psychologist for the school systems I guess it's been about 20 years ago now. And I just really felt, and I come from a background of educators. So I'm married to an educator. My mother was an educator, and lots of the women in my family are educators. So I very, very much was familiar with that space. And just for me, it wasn't something that was feeding my soul, because at the end of the day, I just felt like there was a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, and I wasn't able to make the impact that I wanted to make from a school psychologist perspective. And my goal was, and the way I was trained, was to be an advocate for the student. And I didn't feel like I was able to do as much as I wanted. So I transitioned out of that completely and ended up doing a lot of different things. I sold and managed and operated collectible art stores, and then ended up working in corporate America for close to 20 years in the pharmaceutical, vaccine, medical device space, and then transitioned into consulting on my own. And so it's been quite a journey for me.
So earlier you mentioned your company, KMac Solutions, which you founded. Please describe the work you do, and what is your day-to-day like?
So every day is different, which is fun, because I'm definitely somebody who is a lifelong learner and likes to be inspired by lots of different creative projects. So I really like that aspect of it. I will help organizations when they have a number of newly promoted first-time managers that need leadership development. I also will help with existing leaders. I help when there is high rates of employee turnover and they can't really put their finger on it. When they do employee pulse surveys that reveal that there are some significant issues and they don't know quite how to fix it. So lots of different things. I do custom workshops that I will create content based on what the client's needs are, and I will facilitate those, public speaking. So it keeps me busy, and I'm able to use that creative part of my brain, which definitely feeds my soul. Mm-hmm. And I like to help co-create solutions with organizations to meet their needs and to make a broader impact.
Mm-hmm. And now here, one of the things that all entrepreneurs have to face, but it's something I think is probably even more challenging for educators, because they don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs and don't have entrepreneurship training, or most of the times don't have that experience. And then when they sort of strike out on their own, whether it be full time or they decide, look, I'm going to do this as a side hustle, it becomes of, how do I position myself? How do I tell my story? How do I specialize in this one thing to attract the clients that I want to work with? So to that, how did you discover your niche, and how important is it to niche down to be successful?
So that's a great question. And there was definitely a learning curve for me with regard to that. So if you noticed, when I gave you my answer about what I did, I talked about sort of the win events of when I work with organizations. I didn't really tell you all of the solutions that I provide and how I do that. And the reason why I don't do that is because that is not how the buyers or decision makers think. So I could talk about, I'm an emotional intelligence expert. That's something I specialize in. And that goes in one ear and out the other. They don't know what to do with that information. So instead, I really focused on, okay, if somebody has this problem, would I be able to create a solution around that? If the answer is yes, then that's something that I would target when I'm having a conversation or when I'm creating a promotional piece for myself, to be able to have those kind of conversations with someone so that they recognize that no matter what the solution is that I specialize in, it's something that would bring value and meet their needs. So it's really more of getting into sort of the mindset of the buyer and how they recognize the problems they are facing. And so as a consultant, it's important to be able to talk about those urgent problems that they recognize, not your beautiful, adorable baby, because that will come later. They may or may not understand what that is. So really talking about understanding their needs. And then once they buy into the fact that you understand them and you've established that know, like, and trust factor, then you can talk about if there's a solution that you can co-create that you both agree on. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I do think also just from a marketing perspective, knowing who your target market is and being specific with that will also help. So if you try to sell to everybody in the world, you will sell to no one. So, I would say niching your target market more than just your target solutions.
Okay, so let's stick with this for a little bit because, I've had other educators on here who are consulting and, some of them are, really successful from my point of view in terms of steady income is coming in.
Yep.
And I've asked them sort of, well, how do you define your target market? And then it becomes sort of, I work with anybody who wants to do this.
Yeah.
Now, again, the checks are coming and they're able to live comfortably. So I can't say what they're doing isn't working for them. But if you are working with districts on using Google apps, for example, would you say I work with all school districts? Because I wouldn't think that all school districts should be a part of your target audience.
Right.
How would a teacher then decide of all the things they do? All right. And so let's just say this teacher does work with ed tech, which is much of my audience. Mm-hmm. How did they say, and looking at the type of districts I want to work with, the schools I want to work with, how do they niche that down to a target audience to say, I only want to work with small school districts who are looking to do this, or mid-sized school districts who are now going one-to-one devices? How do they have that conversation and then create that plan?
Yeah, so for example, I have obviously a lot of credibility in the pharmaceutical medical device vaccine space because I spent a lot of time there. So if I'm talking about marketing efforts, it makes sense for me to focus on that target market. But having said that, I have clients in the education sector, in the healthcare space, in the beauty industries, that's not all that I will take. It's not like, if you come to me and say, my organization's having this issue, do you think you can help? That I won't entertain that. I certainly will. But as far as from a marketing perspective, I'm going to focus my efforts where I already have that know, like, and trust factor. And as I build my client base, then it makes sense to maybe expand out. But from to get back to your question of how would they even define that? I think, looking at where you can make your impact, do they have the kind of budget that would be able to pay for the kind of projects that you want to work with and on, I think is important. At the end of the day, it's nice to be able to offer pro bono, but you have to make a living at this, right? And so budget does become a big factor. So for me, that is why I focus on larger organizations, because I'm one person, and while the sales cycle may be a little bit longer, the payoff is definitely greater. They have the budgets to be able to invest in their people, which is, what I focus on. So I think tying it back to what are their problems that your application can solve, and that will help you to define your target market. Mm-hmm. The more specific you can get, the better it's going to be for your marketing efforts. But having said that, that doesn't mean that you can't expand that scope, from your clearly defined target market. It's just that people will be able to recognize you better. Like, oh, she's the one that works with XYZ school district and they're a great reference account. So I would say also looking at that, you definitely want to have some good reference accounts. It's not that I wouldn't work with a small or mid-sized business. I would, but it does help to have some big target global accounts that everyone, no matter where they are, would recognize. That, gives you that validity and credibility right off the bat.
So in saying that, how does someone position themselves to be attractive to the type of clients, they want to work with? Particularly if you haven't worked with anyone and someone is looking, okay, I'm going to pull, K-Max Solutions out of a hat or so. How do you make that impression to where when people start to think of, we're trying to do this, your name comes up in the list they're looking for? And how do you know which projects to say no to?
So I think, especially when you're first getting started, something that's really helpful to do is to ask people for insights interviews. So people that would be maybe the decision makers at an organization that you would be interested in working with as a consultant, asking them for a 15-minute to 30-minute interview where you're not selling yourself, but you're asking them questions that get at the heart of, their urgent problems and needs, and you're learning their language. And then you might be able to share one story of how you might help or how you've helped someone in the past. And the goal of that then is for them to recognize that, oh, this person might be somebody that, we could call on in the future, and to get yourself another conversation where then you can sell what your capabilities are. So I think that's a good thing. Obviously networking. I use LinkedIn a lot to help establish my credibility. So I'll have calls like this with other thought leaders and experts, and we'll just have a conversation. We will record it and we'll put it out there, and then I'll just put excerpts on it. I'm doing a series right now on building trust in organizations and how vital that is. And my collaboration partners from the UK and somebody that I very much respect. So that's another way to build that credibility and get on the radar screen of, somebody who might potentially hire you. And as far as learning to say no, I think that is an important one. I think if you are dealing with somebody who, when you're looking at it, the headache factor and hassle factor is outweighing the benefits of working with this organization, that's a no. If it's something that's going to deplete your soul, that's a no. If the money is not going to be worth it when you're weighing, sometimes you just want to get your foot in the door because you just want to get a start. And so sometimes that you need to weigh that and it's worth it. But at the end of the day, if it's just going to be something that's not going to help you from a visibility, credibility standpoint, that's a no. If your solutions are not aligned with the values of what the organization wants, that's a no. So I think that it comes down to knowing yourself, listening to your gut. Your body will tell you if you're in tune with it and if you're listening, and that comes down to a self-awareness thing. And there have been things that I have turned down, especially as a female entrepreneur. There were a couple potential contracts in Dubai, and the two people that were interested in hiring me, I just didn't feel like we were going to have a good working relationship, and I ended up saying no. It wasn't worth it to me. I don't care how much money was on the table. At the end of the day, we weren't aligned with values. And so for me, it was important to maintain that integrity and just say no. And I'm still hoping that at some point I will be able to work in Dubai because it's one of those bucket list things for me. But those weren't the right opportunities. So, not to get sidetracked by the dollar signs.
I hear you. Or to me, the lack of dollar signs.
Yes. That's important too.
And I say that because, my podcast, it's growing and picking up steam, and I'm able to get people like yourself on my show. And I had an organization reach out to me and said, we love your podcast. We want you to come out and podcast from our conference. And okay, so we had the conversation, and there was no mention of compensation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of called back and said, I'm going to need some airfare.
Mm-hmm.
And that still wasn't enough in my mind, because I'm still discounting the fact that, you got to have a hotel there. But when they came back to me, and the more I thought about it, I was like, okay. Oh, but here's the thing with the airfare. They said, you pay for the ticket, send us back the receipt, and we'll reimburse you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I didn't come to you. You came to me. I'm not getting a check for it. Now, understand that it could turn my career to another place, quote unquote, being like, oh, he's the podcaster that goes to conferences. That could be a great little money-making avenue for me. But I was like, I'm not getting paid, and you want me to pay my own money to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So, no.
So I think one of the things that I've learned over the last year that may be helpful to you or to people viewing this is, and it's still evolving for me, but really getting tight around my business process. And so when there is somebody who reaches out with an inquiry like that, that's the opportunity to educate them on your business process. So thinking ahead of how you would engage with that, and having a contract that they would sign. And so for me, when I do public speaking engagements, I require a 50% deposit of my fee, and everything is spelled out about the things that will be reimbursed, and that will be signed, and I'm not blocking that date off until I receive the 50% deposit. So I think it helps for you to have that nailed down, so then you're really comfortable communicating that whenever there's an inquiry. And that is something that, again, was a learning curve for me, because if you allow the clients to make up the rules, they're not bad people. They don't have bad intentions, but they're going to do what's best for them. And that doesn't always align with what makes sense for your business.
I like that. So you've been dropping gems today.
I want people to learn from my mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes I made.
Awesome. So earlier, you mentioned LinkedIn. How are you using sites like LinkedIn to build your brand as a thought leader? And how important is it for those entering in the consulting field to leverage LinkedIn or a Twitter to attract the clients they want to have?
So I think it is essential. I can't speak for Twitter or Instagram or any of the others, because I don't use those from a business perspective or really even from a personal perspective. I do use LinkedIn. I'm on there daily. I am considered a content creator, so I will post my own original content daily, sometimes multiple times a day. I am very intentional about building my network. So part of that is not just posting your own content, but engaging with others. So when people comment or like or share my content, I will engage with them, and then I engage with other people's content. So I don't just like, because I don't think like is really engaging. I think you have to comment or share for people to notice you and start to understand, oh, this is, Kris's personality. These are the things that she thinks and values, and this is her expertise, etc. And so my content is really a combination of video as well as written posts. I used to do articles, but when they changed the algorithm and no one was reading articles anymore, it just became something I just didn't have the time to do. But people will engage with the written posts and the videos. And my favorite thing to do is to open up a prompt for discussion. So I really like to have the people in my network tell me what they think. And they don't always agree, but that's cool. That's what engages discussion. And I like to hear other people's perspectives and learn from them. And if I can provide content that causes people to pause and think, that's really my goal. Most of the time, it's things that I've observed just watching humans. I'm fascinated by humans. I think about it. I apply it to leadership or organizational development, culture. And those are the things that I like to post about. And obviously emotional intelligence is something else that, is a passion of mine. And so helping people learn their own blind spots and think about when their ego is getting in the way. Those are the kinds of things that I like to engage people with. But from a building network perspective, there's something called a pod on LinkedIn, and it's really just a group of people. You can create your own group. And really you have two different messaging threads. One of them is for conversations and the other one is for links, and you will sort of, agree to engage with their content, they engage with yours. And that's another way to leverage and build a network on LinkedIn.
So I want to throw this out there to you, because maybe 6 months ago, LinkedIn introduced video.
Yes.
And you see all sorts of type of video coming on.
You do.
And LinkedIn is very interesting because it's I don't want to say, very stuffy 3-piece suit, social network, but it's definitely far away from Facebook
right.
in terms that it is really meant for professionals. What are your thoughts on video, and should video be a part of everyone's content creation strategy?
So it's interesting that you asked that question. About this time last year, I was having a conversation with somebody who's before I think they enabled the video capability. And they were saying, you should create a video of yourself, introducing yourself, to your network. And I guess I would have done that through YouTube or whatever. And I was petrified. I mean, just that's such a vulnerable thing, especially when you first start to take video of yourself, because you nitpick every and how you look and all of these things. And I did it when they first enabled it. I was one of the first people to do the video thing, and it was terrifying, but it was also liberating. And so then I realized, like, oh, this LinkedIn community is really supportive, and I am pushing myself out of my comfort zone, and that's a good thing. And people are resonating with what I have to say, and so maybe I'm bringing value to others. And so it started, to become important from that perspective of, like, I never realized that the things that I had to say were all that important, but other people were finding it inspirational or educational or sometimes entertaining. And so I started creating it for that reason. But from a business perspective, I have gotten business just based off of my videos, because the content is resonating. People are saying, wow, I didn't know you did that. That could meet a need in my organization. And I've gotten a lot of inbound requests from that. But I think what video allows you to do is create that know, like, and trust factor that by far is going to help you leap into, someone's radar screen more so than just written post will do. So I do think that needs to be part of a strategy for a consultant. Now, my own personal opinion is that, and this is just me, I don't post daily. I don't post videos of myself daily, because I feel like then you're inundating people with it and the novelty wears off. So for me, I do it once or twice a week. I was actually asked to be part of the Masters of LinkedIn Summit. That the first one's happening in May 10th, I think, in Los Angeles. And I will be representing native video, which is the type of video that I produce. So I don't spend a lot of time producing my videos. Most of the time they don't have any subtitles. It's just me talking. I try to keep them 1 to 2 minutes. There's nothing overproduced about it. I will be debating with Goldie Chan, who does beautiful videos. So I think there's an audience for both. For me, I do what works for me. And, I do want people to realize you can put out a native video and it be just as valuable as a, really produced, beautiful looking video, and not to let that be the thing that holds you back because you say, I don't have the time or the know-how to produce a beautiful video.
So you just mentioned know, like, and trust for the third time.
Yes.
What is it?
It's important to me, I think, and it should be on everyone's radar screen.
So what is it?
I think that it is that intangible thing that allows people to feel connected, emotionally connected with you. When they know, like, and trust you, they are more willing to buy from you. And at the end of the day, we need to connect emotionally. We need to have our content resonate. We need people to think that we are credible so that they are willing to have that conversation. And then you're able to sell your services in a way that makes sense for the organization. And ultimately, they hire you and pay you because as a consultant, you're not going to be in business if no one's paying you to do work. So that know, like, and trust is essential. It is essential. You will not get hired without that.
Awesome. So before we go, what is your call to action for those educators who are looking into starting a business or becoming a consultant on the side, but don't think that it is a viable option for them?
So, and take this with the intent that I'm saying this with lots of love for educators because I come from a family of educators. They are not the biggest risk takers in the world. So that's not who you want to be asking for opinions. Those are the people that love you and they're in your network, but that's not who you want to be asking if you should step out on your own. Who you really want to be asking are people that have already done it. They are people that you look up to. They've taken that leap, and that's who you can tap into. You really want to surround yourself with people who can think boldly and dream bigger than you are and challenge you to get out of your comfort zone, because that is what it requires. At the end of the day, you have to be comfortable stepping out of your comfort zone. And again, I'm surrounded by educators, and I was in the industry myself. That industry is not known for being risk takers. And so those are not the people that you want to consult with when you're trying to figure out if this is going to be a viable option for you. So I would, also ask yourself, what feeds your soul? What are the things you're passionate about? And the other thing I would say is, as I get this question all the time, well, I don't have expertise in this area, or my background's not in that. So what? Go get it. You're not a tree. You're not stuck. You define what success looks like. You define what that next chapter is going to be. Don't let anyone else do that for you. You decide. The only way you're going to know is if you walk through that door. If you always are afraid to take that step, then you're never going to know, and you're probably going to regret that you never allowed yourself to just see. Who cares if you don't succeed the way you want to succeed? It's all a journey, and it's celebrating those small successes along the way. And one of the things when I was starting my business, my son, I have twins, they're going to be 13, a girl and a boy, and my son said, well, what if you fail? And I said, what if I fail? Who cares? Failure is really a learning opportunity. And at least I took a risk. That's like the one thing that I want to impart to my children. Don't be afraid to take a risk. Don't self-sabotage because you're afraid of failure. And so, believing in yourself. I have a vision board. You can't see it, but it's right over there. And it's the goal, my short-term goals and my long-term goals, and they're captured in images. And so I constantly can see those things that I want to achieve, and it's a reminder for me to be very intentional about my values and my actions and align with those things that are important to me.
That's all right. What a great way to close out the episode. Thank you again, Kris, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. I'm still shocked that people say yes to come on the show, especially when I reach out to people that I don't know or have, known a while on social media. So, people, this is coming out. It's going to be dope. Helping you learn about consulting and taking that next step so you can get out there and take control over your money. I keep trying to tell my friends this, people. So as always, you know how I do this. The podcast, the videocast is going up on YouTube. The podcast is going up on iTunes and SoundCloud. I need you to subscribe and follow and leave comments, because I'm trying to get Oprah on the show, and I want her to know that I'm doing it like that. So invest in you, EDU, Peace.